Ooh, I'm back. This angle is never good for me because I'm top heavy. I'm really not this big. Anyway, okay, whatever. Um, so I've been wanting to do another video, but I was like, okay, I mean, I love gnomes and I love antiques, but I'm not a reseller. And if I buy gnomes and antiques every paycheck, then my house is going to look like, well, a crazy person does live here, but it's gonna be like next level crazy. Like I'm gonna have an A&E special or something, like hoarders, or an intervention on like how to not have too many porcelain dolls, whatever. So anywho, I was racking my brain about like what could I talk about, and duh, why not talk about an all-consuming thing in my life that like is really like funny in retrospect and makes for good stories, but yeah, we're gonna take an epic look through my history of completely irrational and hilarious, again, I repeat, in retrospect, panic attacks. So, if you don't know, panic attacks can take, I have panic disorder and depression and anxiety and insomnia, and like, you know, there's a scroll, but those are like the big ones. So, panic, like, I didn't get diagnosed until I was in my 20s, and that was like after I insisted, after I will get there, but after I had like an epic panic attack where I was like, okay, I'm not just high strung and this is some BS and let's figure it out. So anyway, firstly, I want to note that like, I think that some people probably think I talk about like mental health too much, to which I say, F off, because, politely, because I think that like I spent a good 20 plus years of my life being like, Kelly, why can't you get it under control? And thinking it was like a personal fault of my own, and like just bowing out of stuff and missing opportunities because I didn't know that I had a legit medical condition that like I could actually get help for. Like I grew up, I'm 35, so I grew up in the time where like ADHD, it still is, but ADHD at the time was like highly overdiagnosed. And my parents were always told, Kelly has ADHD, but because I'm hyper, and my mind races, anxiety, but they didn't want to like over medicate me. So anywho, let's go through some of the more fun times with panic disorder. My first panic attack that I remember is when I was an aspiring magician. So I was really like, I was dabbling in magic. I was definitely like a, believe it or not, a show off, and like wanted to be the center of attention, oldest child to the T. And so I was like, I'm going to learn how to levitate, as one does. So I threw, okay, so like I had a double decker bunk bed, right? And my sister she slept on one bunk and I slept on the other. We switched back and forth. But it was like one of those, like the top bunk was like shorter, it was a twin bed, and the bottom bunk was a full bunk. And there was like a metal railing. And in order to meditate, and of course no one would know the difference, I strung together a bunch of belts and hooked them around my waist like a little harness, and I like pulled myself up. It must have been like 6 or 7 or something. I pulled myself up, and then surprise, the belts couldn't hold my weight, and I fell down, and I fell on my back on like the metal bar of the bunk bed because the mattress was pushed in too far. So I have like a mole on my back, which is like kind of big, non-cancerous. Don't worry, I've had it checked. And I'm like chilling, and then I'm like, my back is wet. So like I feel my back, and I look up, and I'm like, oh my God, my hand was covered in blood. And this might be like a normal person response, but like I walked out to the living room to be like, Mom, I kind of passed out. It felt like water was like rushing into my head, and yeah, I straight up passed out. Like kind of an illogical response to like having like a scrape. So I guess this is kind of like get used to it, but this is kind of all over the place. Panic attacks are like a heightened, when your body is like has a heightened fight or flight reaction. So there's like no time to rationally think. It's anytime like that your body feels like adrenaline or a sense of like fear or whatever. For me, most of the time, sometimes I hyperventilate and like feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack, which I think is the more what people mostly think of when they think of panic attacks. I tend to like go numb and get like very, very faint and almost pass out or full on pass out. So that was my first one, was my dabbling with magic. Which, yeah, that's a cute look. And a fun story. So at the time, I was mortified and embarrassed that like I overreacted so much, but now, it's hilarious that I was like trying to levitate with effing belts on a bunk bed. Like, what kind of magic? People could see the belts. Like, I mean, I know that magic isn't real, I think, but like people can see the belts. They know I'm obviously not levitating, which is why I never became a full-blown magician, because obviously that was not my skill set. So that was number one. Another one as a child that I had that I can remember is I swam a lot until my ear tubes history ruined my career as a professional swimmer. Just kidding. I was very average and I never would have been one. But anyway, I was doing literally just 2 laps. And keep in mind, like when you're doing a swim practice, you are doing like lap after lap after lap after lap. You know, I could swim more than 2 effing laps, right? Not today, Satan. So when I was like 7 or 8, here's my cat, just coming to chill. I was, I was swimming, and again, I like felt this like sense of adrenaline, which hit that like fight or flight button. And I was like, I can't breathe halfway through the like pool, through the meet. Super cute look, not embarrassing at all. And I had to have someone come and rescue my ass. Sorry, I just cussed. Rescue me in the middle of the pool that I could have very easily swam. But in my head, I was like, I'm dying. That would be an example of like, I was full-blown hyperventilating, had to have like a crew of people like come like put a towel on me like I'm like Mike Tyson or something. I don't know. Do people put towels on Mike Tyson? I don't know. But it was a scene. And everybody was like, that's cute. But it was so embarrassing. So that was like my second like childhood funny, in retrospect, not at the time, panic attack that I had. Another panic attack that I can remember is, I forgot to turn my app thing or my text off. Oh well. Another panic attack that I can remember was when I was oh my gosh, hello Maggie, when I was a camp counselor. And we were taking like all these cute photos and like as a group. And I thought it would be like pose funny, you know, when they're like first smile. And then they're like, now everybody do a funny pose. And you do like the peace sign. She is so extra. It's ridiculous. Everybody's like, you know, do a funny pose. So we had these like little flags because it was the 4th of July. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to pretend to stick this flagpole in my friend's ear. Not a good choice. My friend Rob, who we're still friends, thank God, was like, I can't hear. And I thought that I had like literally like burst his eardrum. And I have a fear of like upsetting people, all that stuff. And so yet again, what does Kelly do? This is, by the way, not the best flight strategy, because I'm pretty sure if I passed out like in a real emergency, like the bear would just eat me, or a gladiator would just like slit my throat or whatever. Like Game of Thrones, I would not last. But anyway, I passed out, again causing a major scene. Then I cried because I was embarrassed that I A, almost like punctured my friend's eardrum, and B, passed out at a summer camp during Special Olympics and had to like, literally like the Special Olympics kids were like running some relay and had to like come and check on my ass because I passed out because of a group photo. So that's cool. That's another fun highlight. Another, oh, and I want to say, like, the reason I like to talk about these things so much is because until I knew that I had panic disorder, I just thought I was like a crazy person who couldn't handle her S. And two, I feel like you feel like when you have these things, you feel like you're the only person, and it's so embarrassing. And when you find out that like millions of other people have the exact same issues that you have, and it's like not a big deal, and they survive, it's not the end of the world, which every time I felt like it was the end of the world and I needed to like evacuate the scene and never show my face again. The more like you see that it's common and the more you talk about it, then the less likely you are to like be humiliated and feel like you need to like hide under a rock for the rest of your life. So that's why I talk about these things so much. And like, I know Joan Rivers said, like, why do you laugh? She had this great quote about people saying, you live such a tragic life. Like, why do you make light of like so many like, why do you laugh at like so many tragic or embarrassing or like horrible experiences in your life? And I think a lot of comedians do this. And she said, well, if you laugh, then you own it, one, and this is not a direct quote, I'm paraphrasing, and two, like, you're able, like, what else are you gonna do? Like, just sit and cry? What good does that do? So, I've learned in my 30s or whatever, 20s and 30s, to not just, like, run from these situations that are, like, humiliating, because they are embarrassing when you literally lose control of your body. And to embrace it, and also to be like, yeah, this happens to me. Like, you might think that I'm like, I don't think anybody thinks I have it all together, but like people that you think have no problems or who laugh and smile all the time are also going through stuff and also like cry and also get embarrassed and mortified and humiliated. And you just have to like pick yourself up and keep going. Back to the funny stories. Okay, this is like the video co-starring Maggie. By the way, fun cat to have when you have insomnia. She's super loud and she loves to like just crawl on me at all times. She's beloved, but take a break. Take a break. I don't think she ever sleeps. Not when I'm here. So anyway, move on to college. AKA, well, let's talk about something else. High school, this isn't really funny. This is just reality. I went from being a, I went to the National Spelling Bee, and I was going to be International Baccalaureate, which is like the highest degree you can get, all AP classes. I went from that to being like having like a 1 point something, which is why I teach special education now. Because if I felt like I was anything short of perfect for any assignment, any class, which perfectionism has a lot to do with anxiety, I would skip. I would go to the nurse. I would be sick. I would make my mom call me in. All these things. So like, it really like interfered with my life in a major way for a long time. So fast forward to college. Another fun, this one's actually pretty funny, hilarious panic attack experience. So I was in like biology or some science class. I hate science. It's the only subject that I can't get behind. Like if I try really hard at math, I don't love math, but I can get an A. Science is just over my head. So I'm in a science class and like I'm kind of a daredevil and like again kind of like to be the center of attention and a show off. So like we had to do this thing where we had to like prick our fingers and then like put our blood on a slide. And I volunteered to go first because I'm like, psh, I got this. I'm not afraid of that. Whatever. Girl. Okay. So I'm trying to prick the blood and the blood's not coming out. And so I'm just like fixating. And then what do? I start to get really, really lightheaded. And so I walk my happy little ass to the hallway and lie down on the floor because I was like basically passing out. And the funny thing was, I'm like lying on the floor of like the science building of USI, University of Southern Indiana, and people are passing me by, and they're like, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And I'm like, "I'm fine, just fine." Who the F is fine lying down in the middle of a hallway? Like, what did I think I was pulling off? Like, did I think I was doing like a sleep study in the middle of the science building? But like, I didn't want to bother anybody. And again, this is before like I was diagnosed with anything. I thought I was just ridiculous. So I got up, was like, peace, and quit the class. That was another trend I did in college. I had an A in the class. Nope, I'm not showing my face there again because fight or flight, I flew my ass out. I was like, I'm not going again. That was humiliating. And I did not know that I had a legit like medical condition that causes my body to like adrenaline up. So I was just like ashamed, so embarrassed. Another one in college in specific is like, I was in this is one of my most classes. I was in this class for Chaucer because I was an English major. And I was like, I'm going to choose the most ridiculous thing to study for like a 20-page paper. And I chose, I don't remember what they're called, but they're like little psalm books that they use in in medieval times. Psalters, that's what they're called. A very obscure topic that was like really difficult to research. And like per me, and I'm sure if you know me now still, if I think I need to learn something, I go hardcore overboard. And I ordered like every book off Amazon on it. I watched movies. I knew my stuff. However, I did not feel like an expert. And in my head, I started catastrophizing the day of. I had a great paper. Everything was good to go. The teacher, I had an A in the class. I was like number 1 in the class. The teacher had invited the assistant dean of USI to come watch it. Like, everybody had faith in me, but me. And in my head, I was like, I don't know everything about Psalters. Again, what undergraduate student is going to know everything about effing Psalters? I think I need to. I'm not like a renowned, this is not my field of study. But in my head, I was like, I do not know everything about this. And what if somebody asks me a question and I don't know? Nowadays, you just say, I don't know, I'll look into it. Especially as a teacher, I know that. But at the time, I was like, nope, definitely can't go. I canceled at the last minute. Said I was sick. My teacher told me how disappointed she was in me. And what did I do? I had an A in the class. I quit. No refund, no nothing. I was like, I cannot show my face. I am an embarrassment. I'm ridiculous. And it was stupid. And then I had another class with her, which I was so mortified. And like, we were fine. It was when you're diagraphing English sentences, etc. Like, I forget what the name of the class was. I ended up being like her top little student. We ended up being friends on Facebook and playing like Words with Friends to this day together. But like, I thought, oh my gosh, I disappointed someone. I was slightly imperfect and they're going to hate me. I can't show up. So that's very much like how my mind works. Like, show a bit of humanity or vulnerability or a sign of imperfection. Not cool. Can't show up. Which is like obviously where the anxiety comes in. Anxiety and panic disorder and depression all come hand in hand, because if you have panic disorder and anxiety, it's something you can't control, which in turn makes you depressed because you're like, why can't I control myself? This is not as comedic as I thought it would be, but it's real talk. So, graduated from college. I mean, there were plenty of other like classes that I like dropped and all that, but they're not as like epic of stories. And I went, I think there are two other like really kind of like humiliating experiences that shaped my life and like had me like go be like, I don't care what my parents say, who think that it's kind of like a bogus disease at this point, or illness at this time. Like now well, my mom passed away, but now they since understood. But and this is funny, like growing up, my mom had a book on like how to deal with your hyperactive child. What do you do with a sensitive child? And I was like, who's this book about? I remember seeing that when I was a kid. And then now I'm like, oh, she was like trying to figure it out. But anyway, so I had a job. I moved to Chicago, and I had a job at a restaurant briefly where my sister worked. And my sister does not have like any of these, you know, she does not clinically have anxiety or depression. Like she, of course, experiences anxiety and depression and all that, but like she doesn't have a diagnosis. Could she maybe get one? I don't know. But anyway, that's an aside. My sister's like killing it in the serving game. Like she'd been working there for a while. It's called Blind Faith, and it was in Evanston, Chicago. And it was like a very kind of like bougie vegan restaurant. Again, in Evanston, Illinois, which is where Northwestern is. So there's like a lot of money, a lot of people coming in like, is that gluten-free? Is this whatever? You know, just very high maintenance clientele. And I simply had to host. I have a college degree. Like I'm a smart person. I'm a sociable person, fully capable. People like me. But again, a lot of self-doubt. So, and a lot of like, I have to do this perfectly, and if I mess up, it's not okay. So I was hosting, and I was like co-hosting with this girl. I got along with everybody really well. And they were like, here, Kelly. And I think it was like, it wasn't Mother's Day, but it was like a big Sunday. And they were like, why don't you host by yourself? I'm like, okay. Like I would rather like apprentice for 2 years and get paid $5 than like get paid more and potentially mess up or disappoint someone. But I was like, okay, got it. Because instead of saying, no, thank you, can I please have one more day of help? Which now, you know, self-advocacy, I probably should have done. And in walks like a group of like 15 people. And I don't have all the tables memorized. And again, I'm not comfortable asking people for help or being like, I'm overwhelmed. So I start to feel like I'm going to pass out. And I get faint. I go in the alley. I lie in the alley. My poor sister and like friends are like bringing me glasses of water, and I'm like, I want nothing more than to not be freaking out. But my body is like freaking out. I couldn't like see, like I couldn't stand. It was terrible, and it was so embarrassing. And again, like, unless you're like my family, I don't want you seeing me like that. And I'm getting better at it, but it's not a fun experience to like be that vulnerable in front of people. And then for people to think that like you're some wild card that they can't depend on. It sucks. So, I eventually got myself together, and they were like, you could stay or you can like go home if you want. And I was like, ding, I will. I'm going to choose the flight option, and I took myself home. And I was like, I am never going back there. And this is embarrassing, but kind of funny in hindsight, and I would not do this again. Again, she's medicated. She's therapized. she goes to therapy. I'm a special ed teacher now. I'm a lot more like sympathetic to myself. I try to be at least. But at the time, I was like, I am a crazy person, and that was so embarrassing. So I went back to Indianapolis, and no joke, I was too embarrassed to call and like talk to anyone that I had my friend, Jessica, shout out to you, call from a bar in Indianapolis while I like had sunglasses on and was like crying and like looking down and be like, yes, this is Kelly. I am not going to be returning to this job. I couldn't even call myself. I had my friend pretend to be me, and they're like, you sound different. And she's like, yeah, I'm feeling a bit sick. Like, or it must be like the reception. And she like called in and quit for me because I was like, I cannot go back there. Like, and this is funny, but this sucks. Like, this has been something that like, it is not, nobody can make this up. And I know people are like, be strong. You know what? You do it. Okay. Like, when you feel like you don't have control over your own body and you're like passing out in front of people, it's easier to say like, calm down, which by the way, never tell a person with anxiety or depression or panic attacks to calm down. Oh, okay. Cool, I'm calm now. What? If I could calm down, I would calm down. I'm not having fun making an ass out of myself. No. Okay. And then, so like the straw that broke the camel's back, I worked as and I still like regret this to this day because there were so many cute guys that worked at this place. Like that's my big regret. But again, my sister started a job at it was a trucking company, and one group was like the carriers, and one group was like the brokerage part of it, the accounting, etc. She worked for the accounting one, which was TSG. I worked for Freight Exchange, and it was like me and like two other women, and then a bunch of like it was a startup business, hot, cool, 20-something-year-old men with like a ton of money. And I basically had to like dispatch drivers and coordinate trucking, like make sure the truckers were like on their routes, they were due where they were supposed to be. So like I would talk to like the different brokerage firms that were brokering freight to be carried from here to here. So I would talk to customers and drivers. And it was a stressful job. It was a lot of yelling because it's Chicago and all men. So it's a bunch of like loud Chicagoans yelling at the driver like, I don't know how you're going to do it, but you better make it happen. A lot of angry drivers, whatever. But I was good at it. The drivers liked me. Everybody I worked with liked me. And literally I had one day we started on a new floor, and we had started with this new computer system. Okay. So the day beforehand, I was offered to be salaried at like 30,000 something with an English degree. And I probably, if I had moved up, I'd probably be making more than I make now, to be honest. Like, they're all doing very, very well. And all was hunky-dory. The next day, I got, like, we had this new system. Everybody was kind of freaking out, and everybody was on edge. And I was, like, silently, like, this is something that, with anxiety, like, in my head, I'll be like, oh my gosh, Kelly, it would really suck right now if you freaked out and had a panic attack. Because when you have panic attacks, then you also are phobic about having panic attacks. So, like, for example, if I've had a panic attack at a Walmart, I don't want to go back to Walmart because I'm afraid I'm going to have a panic attack at Walmart again. Like, it becomes, like, more triggers. So anyway, I'm sitting in my head, and I'm, like, drinking water, and I'm going to the bathroom a lot, trying to keep myself calm. In my head, I'm like, everybody must notice that I'm going to the bathroom a lot. Nobody cares, but that's a cognitive flaw that people have with panic disorder, is that it's called mind reading, where you think that you can read people's minds and you think they're thinking about you. Another one is catastrophizing. Like, you imagine the worst catastrophe that could happen. So I'm imagining that I'm going to pass out in the middle of this place. So anyway, I keep going back and forth to the bathroom, long walk, thinking everybody's noticing. I'm sure no one was. And instead of being like, because I didn't have the words at the time, pretty sure I'm having a panic attack, give me 10, I'll be back. And I also didn't have medication. Girl, medication and breathing exercises. If I had those tools, that'd be cool. I started to panic, and I like left the building. Texted my sister because she works there, and I was like, can you come out? I'm freaking out. And she like, I'm hyperventilating outside. This was a hyperventilating panic attack, not a pass out one. It started out pass out, then I was hyperventilating because I was too embarrassed to go back in, and it was like 15 minutes, and people were like, where's Kelly? So I was like, I quit. I'm out. I'm too embarrassed. So stupid. Like, in hindsight, so stupid. I'm sympathetic to myself now because I didn't know any better. But I was so ashamed. I like went home, and I lived at the time with my sister and her now husband, who at the time was my best friend. That's how they got married, or how they met each other, in Chicago. And I was like hysterically crying, and I was like, I cannot keep doing this. Like this, like I can't keep having insomnia. I cannot keep like having these like humiliating experiences. I was like, something is up. I don't care what anybody says. I need to get to a doctor because something is up. This is not normal, and it's not like a fair way for me to live. And I was like, I need to go home and I need to regroup. So I quit the job with no notice via an email that I had my dad write because I was too embarrassed, which of course was from me. And so I went home. I got a little bit like agoraphobic, like, because I hadn't driven in a year. So like I had trouble driving to like down the street because I was like, what if I lose control of the car? Although this is taking like a dark turn, but it's okay. That's fine because people need to know. And I got myself into a doctor, and they were like, you have panic disorder, you have major depressive disorder, you have generalized anxiety disorder, and like you need to be medicated. They were like, this is a chronic condition. This is just like diabetes. This is your brain. Your serotonin and dopamine levels do not operate like on the same way that like most people do. And when I tell you, like, that was like such a relief to hear that it was like not just like my fault. Like I had spent years beating myself up. Like, why am I not like strong enough to deal with this? Like, why can everybody else be normal? Like, and I can't. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna like get choked up. So that was like the beginning of my mental health journey, which I'm so happy that I began because, you know, within the next, 6 years, I lost like my mom and brother. And like, had I not like, and you know, I had like hiccups where at one point I had to do like intense outpatient therapy, like when my mom was in hospice or whatever, because like when you have anxiety, like you feel like you need to control everything, and my life was out of control. So like it's not like been like smooth sailing ever since. Like I've had times where like I've thought that I was cool and I've gone off my medicine, and then I've been like, whoops, never mind, you're not cool. And I've had my psychiatrist scold me like, Kelly, if you had a broken back, you would not be like, I'll figure it out. Or Kelly, if you had diabetes, you wouldn't be like, I'm gonna go off this insulin. And it's the same thing with like mental health. Like mental health is a legitimate thing. Like I don't understand why people, you know, like if I like cut myself and I bleed, you're gonna be like, you're bleeding. The skin is like a complex organ. Why do people have such difficulty? Why is it so embarrassing? Why is it not embarrassing to call in for a cold, but it's like embarrassing to like explain mental health? Like your brain. The brain is like the most unexplored frontier. It's the most complex part of our body. There's room for people to have different things going on in their brain, and there shouldn't be any shame in it. And I wish more people would speak out. And like I benefit so much from people speaking out. And like when I've gone through dark times, one time my phone was like, Kelly, are you okay? Because I was searching so much on Instagram, like insomnia, how to deal with like grief, all this stuff. This is like kind of like a floodgate of talking, but like my goal in life and why I became a special education teacher is like I want to make other people realize that it's okay, it's not their fault, and that you can get through it, and that like you can look back and laugh or like learn from things, and that you should always be able to like ask for help or advocate for yourself. And if the person that you're talking to does not understand what you're going through, find your tribe that does, or go to a doctor. Like there's no shame in that. Like you should, I probably could have gone to a much better school had I known and been diagnosed with like an emotional disability in high school. I certainly wouldn't have gotten a 1 point something. I probably would have gotten what I'm capable of, which is like 5.0. Like when I was at Butler, I got with post getting medicated and all that, like I had all A's. Why? Because like I knew what I needed. And now like when I'm at my job, and it's not easy, but like I can be like, I'm more comfortable to be like, I'm feeling panicky. Can you like help me in this meeting or whatever? And thank God for that. So like, I just want to say like, be open. You will get through it. It gets better. All that stuff. And Hopefully this was a funny and helpful talk about panic attacks. Now you know. Have a good day. Be blessed or read a positive quote. Mwah.